All right, welcome back to segment 3. Where we're going to tell you all the fantasy do's and don'ts, not just for week 2, but maybe for the rest of the season. Super stoked about this. George, you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go. Get it started. All right, George, we're going to do a little segment. You tell me from week 1, who's got you nervous, right? Maybe you're not quite ready to cut bait on them all the way, but like you should have your finger on that release button.
So I'm super nervous about Hayden Hurst in Atlanta.
Okay.
Drafted him thinking he was going to come in and he was going to be Austin Hooper's direct replacement, and he might even be even better than that. But the fact of the matter is, Matt Ryan had over 40 throws, probably more than that, probably 40, 45. I'm not looking at it right now. 5 of those attempts went to Hayden Hurst.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, folks like Russell Gage, folks like Julio Jones, they were all feasting on it. So I'm really nervous about having him in my fantasy lineup. He's my starter in a couple of leagues because I waited. So yeah, I'm really nervous about what Hayden Hurst is going to do the rest of the year.
My biggest nervous guy that I got out there, and we're going to choose a few others. I'm going to make you choose a quarterback here in just a second. I'm actually going to go with a bit of a surprise after week 1. I'm nervous about Drew Brees. And I know I'm not the only one out there, and this is kind of a common, nervous pick. Tampa's defense isn't that good. And I know you said you've waited on them in a couple of leagues, but, their defense isn't that impressive. And without Tom Brady's, interception throws, oof, I didn't love Drew Brees out there. Tell me why we should keep him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, especially with Michael Thomas being hurt.
Yeah. All right, George, you tell me who's the quarterback you're most nervous about.
Personally, I'm most nervous about Baker Mayfield. He had a week 1 where he was ranked 30th in the league, and there's only 32 or so, or maybe a couple more teams. So that's
depends on if we're counting Taysom Hill, right?
It's bottom of the barrel there, and it makes me nervous because he's got so much talent around him. When it comes to Odell Beckham, when it comes to Jarvis Landry, he just has a lot of weapons and a lot of pieces around him where he should be getting it together. Maybe he should spend less time focusing on if one of the bathrooms doesn't work at the stadium, or being able to fix the chairs in the stadium. Every time I see one of those commercials, I'm like, come on, man, focus on playing football a little bit more.
No, it's hard to disagree with you. My biggest concern, I'm going to go back, so I'm going to stay in Cleveland. You mentioned a tight end. We're going to eventually get through all the positions. You mentioned a tight end. I'm going to stay in Cleveland. Austin Hooper. I know he was kind of that chic pick because he had such a great year, probably why you picked Hurst, right? He had such a great year in Atlanta. He had 3 targets. I get it. That Ravens defense is legit there for real. But man, he had 3 targets, 2 catches, 18 yards. The only thing that you can say that's good about week 1 for Austin Hooper is that Njoku is out for the season. That's the only thing that happened that was good for him, is that there's no competition for catches there now from the tight end position. And I don't think he's got it going on. Let's move into running backs, right? Now this one's a little tricky because I don't know, 45 running backs got hurt last week and are out for a significant time of the season. So aside from injured running backs, right? Aside from that, who's got you concerned from that running back position that maybe went a little higher that you're like, uh-oh, wish I didn't have him?
I'd be concerned if I was somebody that invested a lot in Cam Akers. From the perspective,
you're reading my mind for a little bit later in this segment. I agree. Now, don't get me wrong. That's not the guy I'm going to pick, but I'm with you. If you picked up Cam Akers and you thought that was going to be the workhorse back, oops.
Yeah, there's too much Malcolm Brown going on. There's too much other factors that are out there. It's just I've seen a lot of people putting a third or fourth round investment in him, and it's just too much up in the air. There's too many other assets out there that they're more comfortable with.
No, I don't disagree with you. Now I'm going to go a little bit of a different direction here. This is going to be a little bold because he didn't necessarily have a horrible game, but it was that he was just he was outplayed by Kareem Hunt. Nick Chubb, he was going early in a lot of leagues, and when I look at Nick Chubb, now he had 10 carries for 60 yards. 6-yard average is great. If I'm a running back, like, that's awesome. I did it right. And maybe Kareem Hunt played more in that game because they were down so much early, but Hunt out-carried him, out-snapped him, had more catches. Is Kareem Hunt going to be the guy there? And I'm not saying he is or isn't, but like best case scenario, it looks like that's going to be a split. And if you look at the end of last year, Hunt had more points in the games that he had played in than Chubb did. If you're a Nick Chubb owner, that is a problem. And that's a big problem because I also expect the majority of the year, Cleveland's going to be down. They're going to be throwing the ball, and it's going to be Kareem Hunt time. I like it. I just see I'm not even – yep, you're right. All right.
Yeah.
Let's see. I feel like we're going to be dogging on some Cleveland players. Tell me a wide receiver. You've shared a couple with me as we've talked at work and stuff. Share a wide receiver with me that you've got some concerns about.
Wide receiver that I have some concerns about is DJ Moore.
Oof, don't tell me that.
Because what I've seen is he was getting drafted as top 10 talent, but he really is working with a new quarterback. Mm-hmm. There's folks like Robbie Anderson that are there. Mm-hmm. There's all other receivers with the Panthers that are kind of getting left in the dust. So is DJ Moore that tier 1 wide receiver that you can trust day in and day out to get the job done? Start him every single time without blinking? I don't really think so.
Luckily in our league, I got him, if my mind is serving right in the 3rd round. And so I didn't get him. It wasn't a top 10 talent by any stretch. But he is definitely supposed to be the top receiver on my team, and he didn't perform it in week 1. I'm going to hope that Teddy Bridgewater, it's just taking some time for that to gel. Because Bridgewater looked pretty good filling in for Drew Brees last year. And I thought he got a bit of a hard. I know he had some injury issues in Minnesota, but I thought like he didn't necessarily play horribly when he was playing. A lot of times, like, he was playing well. So I hope he can come through. But I do have concerns about that the overall kind of just gel and health and sloppiness we kind of talked about that Carolina team. So that'll be interesting to see where that goes. But man, I hadn't necessarily thought about him as someone to worry about. But I'm going to hope he's going to be their main end zone target because he is a big body there. And I watched him in the Big Ten, and he was a big body there and did a lot of damage in college. So that's what I'm going to hope for. Man, I hate hearing that. I'm going to go on the other end. Man, after week 1, I'm worried about T.Y. Hilton. It wasn't even a gelling issue with Rivers. He was getting open, and he was getting the ball thrown to him, and he couldn't catch the damn ball. And that drops, if you look at him, drops have always been an issue in his career. But he had such a good rapport with Andrew Luck that he kept getting the ball. At the time, that was also the only guy Andrew Luck could really throw the ball to. I don't know, like, there's a few more weapons on this team, and this is a new quarterback, and he's not a rookie. And Peyton wouldn't have put up with it, and Phillip Rivers ain't Peyton Manning, but he's a veteran QB. You drop too many easy passes on Rivers, he's just going to stop chucking you the ball. And so I've got some concerns about the guy that last week I thought would be a comeback player of the year candidate who may not be as a 31-year-old, I think, may not be too much longer for at least for the Colts, if not the NFL in general. So we'll see what happens there. What handcuffs are good to go get now that are still available? Like, what do you think about this running back situation that's kind of going on in the NFL today?
Well, I think if you were paying attention for when Fournette was cut from Jacksonville Jaguars, you would have realized that James Robinson is actually somebody they feel confident with, and that he was a great stash in the last couple of rounds. And if you picked him up, you saw that he got all the touches in the Jacksonville backfield. He catches the ball. He's looking really good. He's not looking like he's a dynamic player, but he looks like that he's somebody that can really make a difference for your team. So I would say he's a great pickup. If anybody is crazy enough to still have Emmanuel Sanders out there on the wire, I would say pick him up because Michael Thomas is hurt, and even before Michael Thomas was hurt with his 12 to 14 targets a game, uh, Emmanuel Sanders was still going to be a really great piece to have as a complementary for the Saints offense this year.
Now, as far as Jacksonville goes, Raquel Armstead, right, was initially going to be the back out there. And obviously he's kind of run into his own COVID issues. They've got Ozigbo on the IR for a little while at least. Do you think that long term, Raquel is Armstead going to be the back in Jacksonville? Doesn't really matter because like their backs are going to be anyway. So just like you can just stream their backs if you need one. What do you think there?
I don't think Armstead is going to be the guy. I think that if you were paying attention to uh, training camp, that there was a lot of talk about James Robinson, and that he was going to be the go-to guy. One of the reasons why they let Fournette go is because they were so confident on him. I'm very high on James Robinson. I think that a lot of people saw that Armstead was the second person on the depth chart, and they just made the assumption that when Fournette was cut, that he was going to be the go-to guy. And a lot of people blew a lot of their fab budget on it as well.
Interesting. What I will tell you is that I hope I have our Armstead in my dynasty league. Now I didn't pick him anywhere near early, but thought like that's a flyer-worthy pick. Now that was also before Fournette was traded, so or released, full-on released. My big pickup, the guy that you got to go get, we kind of touched on this earlier, Malcolm Brown. A lot of people thought Cam Akers was the guy. I think even number 2 on the depth chart, or I think number 1 on the depth chart was was Henderson initially. And then it was like everybody thought it was just going to be Cam Akers, and we know that Brown's number 1 on the depth chart, but it's probably going to be Cam Akers. No, Malcolm Brown went out there, took his one chance that he's really gotten, after all these years playing behind Gurley, and said, this is me. I'm going to go run the ball. And I think there's still indecision, and I think that some other players are going to get theirs, but you mentioned earlier, like the guy to watch out for in a running back like Cam Akers, he's hurting. I think that's a spot. As far as running or wide receivers go, and you kind of poked on this guy last week, but I think he's still available on the wire for a lot of leagues. Laverius, I think if I pronounce his name correctly, Chenault, and that dude, if you can go get him, he's still available in a ton of leagues. That's a guy, he is not available in our league. He's available in a ton of leagues, and that's a guy that you can go get, and that I think will find success. Another guy that had a big game against the Colts is Keelan Cole, Sr. And I think that generally speaking, the Jaguars were down most of that game and throwing the ball a lot of that game. And I think Minshew's going to continue to be chucking the ball all year long. And so I think, although he didn't necessarily have a great game, he had 2 touchdowns and 200 yards. I think long term that those are players that, if it's not a dynasty league, I don't know that I'm spending a lot of effort on Cole there. Also, if you were someone dumb enough to spend some effort on D.D. Westbrook, he was a coach's no play, so get him out of there. He's done. They obviously don't see value in D.D. Westbrook, so unless injuries happen, he's out. Move on from him. Chenault, Cole Sr. are your guys in Jacksonville behind DJ Shark. So.
And I love it, Rick. And the reason why he's not available in our league is because he's on my bench.
Yeah, your
and
bench.
Chenault was a good flyer at the very end of drafts.
Yeah, I think. Well, I saw him, but for me at the end of ours, and I'm still wishy-washy on him, is Mike Williams. I picked him up at the end of the draft in our league. And if he can get healthy, I think that's a body that Tyrod Taylor can just throw the ball up to. We remember, and my thought was, Tyrod Taylor had some initial, if my mind is going correctly all the way back, he had some success early in Sammy Watkins' career, just throwing the ball to him and having him go get it early in Sammy's career. So that's an interesting guy. I'll tell you what, if it's Wednesday, so he's probably already gone. If somebody hadn't picked up Sammy Watkins in a league either, I know there wasn't a lot of preseason buzz about Sammy Watkins because there's so many weapons there. They obviously aren't opposed to feeding him the ball. And I think you're going to continue to see teams key in on Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Somebody's got to be left open there, and I think a lot of times that might be him. And I think at least for now, he's rated higher than Hardman. So that might be a guy that you can go get in some leagues and still find some success with as well. But in all likelihood, after that first game, everyone was like, well, there's a guy to go get.
Yeah, I'll give you a deep sleeper that didn't play for the first week, but the Tennessee Titans, Darrington Evans.
Darrington Evans, yeah. Yeah, he's
if
the guy.
If there's an injury to Derrick Henry, that guy's in there. Even if there isn't an injury to Derrick Henry, that guy's going to be catching a lot of the passes out of the backfield.
Yeah, I've got him in a league where I'm stashing him, hoping that eventually something happens and he'll get some time to play. He's a bit of a jitterbug out there that can do some things, so I'm looking forward to seeing him play. All right, so George, tell me the one piece of fantasy advice that you can give me. But before we sign off, what's the one piece of fantasy advice that people can take right now and take to the bank?
My advice is always to think a couple of weeks ahead of time. So don't think about the week that you actually need that player. Don't think about your bye weeks. Think about plugging the holes ahead of time. If you think a couple of weeks ahead of time, you're always going to get that player that you need off of waivers. You'll get that defense that you need to plug in and be as effective as possible for you, and you'll be one step ahead of the game. No roster is good enough that you shouldn't be pruning it and working on it and dropping people and adding people on a week-to-week basis. One of my biggest things is if I want somebody really badly and I don't have enough room for them, I'll drop my kicker because my kicker doesn't mean anything to me. As long as they're there on Sunday, and if I like a player enough, I might even consider not even rostering my kicker.
Yeah, no, I understand that if you can use them deep enough in the league. Here's my one piece of fantasy advice. I think there's going to be a lot of people trying to sell on Benny Snell and or James Conner. Stay away. Unless you can get both, stay away. Because if James Conner's healthy, Snell's not going to get squat. And if you have James Conner without Snell and his injury history, that's not where you want to be. And if you happen to have James Conner and you can't get rid of him, you better go find Benny Snell. So that's my advice for those folks, for those running backs. There's already been a ton of injuries, and if you have a guy that's got that, we kind of talked about handcuffs early on, but if you've got a guy that kind of has that injury prone and you don't already have the handcuff, you better go get him. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself up Schitt's Creek when he gets injured, and there's nobody left on the wire because it's already slim pickings at running back. So with that, George, appreciate it. This is the end of segment 3. We had a successful week this week, so looking forward to getting this one posted. Appreciate all our watchers. Don't forget to subscribe down at the corner here to the channel and catch us every week. George, you got anything for the beautiful people?
Goodbye, M&M Nation.
M&M Nation.
See you next week.